welcome everybody here to today's webinar, Operate Industrial Edge and Machine Connectivity Easily and at Scale. Thank you for your interest and for taking your time to join us today. Also, thank you to my colleagues here, Andrew and Tobias from Portainer. It's not the first time we are doing a webinar together. I think it's been between 2 and 3 years. I guess some of you, it's a new topic, and we have some updates here, new features in our portfolio, which we want to talk about today. So what is the plan here? If I maybe just briefly can outline the agenda. So we'll begin the discussion with a short talk without even showing slides here about OT-IT integration as organizational challenge. How do we see the market? How has it changed? Why is it not only a technical challenge? Then Tobias will present a couple of slides and speak about Portainer and how the Portainer platform can ensure scalability and efficient operation of the industrial edge. I will present with a couple of slides the software portfolio connectivity products for the industrial edge. And then we'll start our live demo, which is actually split into 2 parts. I will do a short first part, let's say diving a little bit deeper into a technical detail, how we with our product now can enable configuration management. And then Andrew will show how to use this feature with Portainer and let's say use Portainer to deploy software products in a scalable, efficient way in real-world applications. To finish this webinar, we have 1 or 2 slides, some let's say basic information how to get started with us if you're interested, and then there should be some time left. I think we scheduled the meeting for 40 minutes for questions and answers. So that's the idea today. Tobias, as I said, do you want to start here? How do you see the market? Why is OT-IT integration not only a technical challenge, maybe more so even an organizational challenge?
Yeah, for sure, I can start here. So basically what we are often seeing is that, especially in mid-sized companies and larger enterprises, that you have different stakeholders as always in the project involved. In this case, it follows a certain pattern. So often, not always, but often can be IT that's building a project, right? Especially in an IIoT project. Then it's OT who should run it in the end, right? And then it's the ownership is always unclear, right? No one wants to really own it. And this is often from an organizational standpoint, right? Leaving all the technical aspects that we are covering in a second, leaving these ones aside, right? This is a real challenge from an organizational standpoint because when there's no ownership for specific projects that you start, it often won't succeed, right? Or won't be continued in a way that after the POC and also a successful POC phase, a project is then successfully implemented and especially rolled out. I don't know if you have gathered similar experiences in your past, Christopher?
Yeah, I can confirm. I mean, you just I think you mentioned a couple of aspects. Ownership responsibilities. Let me begin with the following argument. I mean, innovation now is software and IT driven, this creates a different solution context for the way how our customers are now using connectivity. So the traditional way how our customers would deploy connectivity, or the traditional solution context, we talk to one location, let's say shop floor people, OT, maybe maintenance, application was HMI, maybe MES or SCADA. Users needed machine connectivity, easy to use, install it once, and then no need to touch it for the next 5 or 7 years to come. Yeah, people didn't have IT skills, not needed. Why should they? That, let's say, is a summary of our traditional solution where we sell machine connectivity into. And now with all the possibilities that advanced algorithms, innovation in software solutions is bringing, the solution context is changing. It's not only one application that needs to be connected, but there are quite a few applications. They change over the lifetime, and customers have started to use central platforms, be it cloud or be it inside the computing center of the company, but a central platform to roll out software applications across multiple locations. And that means the question, how to operate a solution, who's in charge of what, becomes much more critical now, including the question how machine connectivity is operated.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And this is definitely not a storytelling, right? So recent research have also indicated from last year that the questioned companies there, I think 53% said that they have implemented IoT projects or started with them, but just 9% in the end successfully or even did the rollout, right? Which also indicates, of course, there can be multiple aspects, but definitely also organizational challenges one.
Yeah, I based on our experience, I clearly say the gap is usually not technology, but as said, it's questions organization, who's in charge, who has responsibility for which part of the solution, which skill sets do people have. Yeah, what is still being done by local people, by OT personnel, what is maybe production IT doing, what is the central team doing. And yeah, if I may add maybe one or two anecdotes to illustrate that. Yeah, when I started in a BDM role here about 10 years ago, my very first project, a CTO who was who had the idea we can use your software machine connectivity to send directly to the cloud and then use some advanced algorithms to analyze quality topics to reduce the number of samples I have to take. And it wasn't a big project, but it took 1 year. And the main reason why it took so long has been that the head of production resigned because he felt overruled by IT. Yeah, as a very first small anecdote or example where organizational challenges have an impact. And you see similar questions in bigger and more recent projects. You know, what do you want to manage centrally? What do you handle locally? It's often not driven by what is possible with technology and what is best in theory, but what are the real world organizational boundary conditions, skill sets who drive here solution architecture and maybe vendor selection. And this is, if I may add this, Tobias, this is what makes for us now, from our perspective, Portainer interesting, because it's really the way how we look at it, a tool which allows our customers with the typical skill set to take advantage of software, innovative software technology, containerization in their specific organizational boundary conditions, within their boundary conditions.
Correct. So it can, it's definitely an enabler, right? So it can't solve every organizational challenge, but of course to enable also teams to use technology and to consume technology without always being in this case, IT expert is definitely beneficial for our customer landscape and also for our joint customer landscape. And I can just quickly
let's continue. Exactly.
Correct.
Yes, please go ahead and present here the Portainer platform and your company.
Correct. So not all of you are familiar maybe with our product offering and our company as it is, right? So we are focused on software container management, so everything related to, for instance, what you might know when you hear Docker, Podman containers, or Kubernetes. We are managing these applications in this format at scale. We are a company from New Zealand, or headquartered in New Zealand, and we are widely spread, right? Which means also this large capital M stands for million, right? So we have millions of users and over billions of downloads. And also the next slide is illustrating this. So beside of the technologies that I mentioned, which are also now presented on the left-hand side, we have this what we call edge to cloud continuum, right? So you have the Portainer in the middle, and then you can manage applications no matter where they are located. If it's on the cloud, on-premise means for us large bare metal servers or virtual machines, or at the edge. And edge infrastructure means then, for instance, PLCs or also industrial PCs, where your application can run close to the data source, in this case, then machines. And one of these devices can also be the edge node that you will elaborate on later on, right, Christopher?
Yeah.
And with this in mind, we will also present a short demo, right? So slides are great, but an example is always better, and to not only focus on the application itself, but also on the corresponding configuration, because it's always a paradigm, this copy and paste approach, right? Especially from top level, mid-level managers. Then when it works in one factory, it's just easy. You can just copy and paste your solution, but often the machines are quite unique, and at least they need specific configs. And especially when talking about machine connectivity, and this is why we have this config management capability, which we will elaborate on in a second, right? To also make sure that machine-specific configurations for, in this case, the SDX suite from Softing is delivered alongside the application. One hint also from here with regards to our roadmap, we are launching a new product called Industrial and Portainer, which is sitting on top of Portainer. And this is simplifying the user experience even more, right? So we aren't mentioning, for instance, technologies like Docker, Kubernetes on the interface itself. So it's very application centric, and you can easily distribute applications, update them, and also deprovision applications, which is, by the way, also one important aspect of a whole application lifecycle. To also consider how to get rid of applications and, of course, how to update them. And with this, I'm handing over to you again.
Yeah, thank you, Tobias. Okay, yes, I guess most of you know Softing, but some of you may not. So you give me 30 seconds to speak about the company. We are a mid-size company from Germany, 400 employees in total, headquartered near Munich. And underneath the holding structure, Softing AG, there are 3 bigger business units. We represent here Softing Industrial, shown at the right-hand side. So as the name suggests, a specialist for industrial communication, subsidiaries in the United States of subsidiaries, Softing AG subsidiaries in the United States and other countries, the global network of partners. So we do have a global presence and customers in process and in factory automation around the globe. We are not a young company. We exist since about 40 years. We know how to develop industrial grade products. For example, the data feed product family, the one which is, let's say, the product family for OT, IT integration. We currently have more than 25,000 installations in production. So when I speak about products here and Industrial Edge, just one slide to introduce here maybe a few names and to illustrate what we are doing. So at the left-hand side, let's say, you see the automation network, device vendors, Siemens, Rockwell, Allen Bradley, Schneider, others, PLC vendors, or maybe CNC machine vendors. Or we want to connect devices, sensors, actuators, could be hard device, could be a Profinet device or Profibus device, others, which you also know how to connect. At the right-hand side, which kind of applications do we enable, or where can applications run it? That potentially can be very different things. Yeah, traditionally, what you see at the center, we have on-premises, maybe an HMI, SCADA system, MES application running. In more innovative solution architectures, customers are using cloud platforms to deploy applications on cloud platforms. In many cases, it's a mix, it's a hybrid architecture. Or we can make data available for digital plant asset management. You may have heard about offerings or solutions like Amazon AMS Device Manager, Honeywell ABB, similar solutions. Traditionally, these are separate worlds. So we now speaking about our products. We have now a new product family we introduced to the market called SDEX Suite, Shop Floor Data Exchange Suite, to make available process data from PLC's machines to applications at the top right. And we have a SmartLink product family, making device data available to digital plant asset management. In innovative solutions, those applications are no longer really separate. Yeah, you may have big data analytics data working on data from both device data and process data. Some of you may know a Namur open architecture, which for the process industry is a reference architecture where those two, let's say, applications or integration scenarios merge. So these are our products here for OT/IT integration, and they come as Docker container, which is then creating an integration scenario with Portainer. The Shop Floor Data Exchange Suite. Some of you know maybe our existing customers, Edge Connector, Edge Aggregator, Secure Integration Server, Edge Gate. Basically, it's a new product family name to replace the names I just mentioned. So it's a connectivity platform as outlined, connecting PLC's machines. What is relatively new and an interesting feature, SDEX Suite also is an aggregation server. So you may have many OPC server as a data source. You want to simplify access for an application by aggregating those many OPC servers in one. You may even want to use an OPCA information model. Yeah, there are things like a Wien-Stefan spec for food and bev or PADIM for process industries, a standardized way how to create an OPCA interface, and we can handle that now with SDEX Suite. And now what is in particular interesting regarding Portainer and the new features, for us very new for Portainer. When did you introduce configuration management? A year ago, maybe?
1.5 years ago.
Yeah. So the new thing is that our products not only have now a graphical user interface and the REST API. The REST API for the Docker container is available already since years, but we now introduce also an option to do file-based configuration. Yeah, so you can, and that's the point where I will dive a little bit into technical details in a second or in a minute. You can create a file which describes how SDEX Suite should be configured. After instantiation, you no longer have to do it each time via the GUI individually. That's file-based configuration. The second product, and I think Tobias, you mentioned it briefly, just one slide. What we also now introduced to the market is the so-called Edge Node Portainer. It's an ARM-based device. You see it here, industrial grade, of course, with a pre-installed Portainer agent, which is, so to say, the local Portainer component on edge infrastructure on an S device, so that you can deploy software modules, Docker container on this device via the Portainer platform. It's a pre-installation, so it's a step to further simplify, let's say, the rollout, the first steps, creating here industrial edge, a bigger IoT solution. And we want to make it possible here with Edge Node Portainer. As said, it's hardware plus a pre-installed Portainer agent. Of course, when we sell, we expect it to be used always in combination with our SDEX Suite or maybe a SmartLink. No, sorry, not SmartLink. That was wrong. SmartLink is not supporting ARM, but anyway, so combination with SDEX Suite. But it's open and you can deploy third-party components, Mosquito, MQTT broker, or other Docker container also on top of this device. Okay, so these are the two products, and now we'll start the demo. And as I said, I will do a first short part of the demo. You should see here now my desktop. So I'm using here just a regular laptop, Windows 11. Let me call here the command line interface. on my laptop, I installed the Windows subsystem for Linux, which I'm calling here. So I'm showing you now how to use command line, and then Andrew will show you how to do it in a much nicer, comfortable, more scalable way, of course, using the Portainer platform in a second. But
Christopher will do it the hard way.
In the hard way, and what I'm really trying to do is here to start STEX as Docker container on my laptop. Let's just double check it's not running, so not much is going on. I have running here Portainer, but I'm not showing it. So that's now the command line to use if you want to start STEX, the Docker container here in this environment. So that looks good. And now I should be able to use just here localhost. To connect to the STEX Docker container running locally. So we ignore here the security stuff. And that's how it looks when you start up STEX for the very first time. You have a default first user, to log in. You are then forced to change the password. Nobody forces you to really change it. And you see here STEX suite. Yeah, for those of you who know Softing products, maybe Datafeed, OpenC Suite, or Edge connector, where you have the biggest similarities, that should be more or less familiar. Of course, this is not a webinar now to show you here and to do it here, how to connect a real PLC and so on. Yeah, just to give you an idea, here you have then the settings to connect, for example, a Siemens PLC as a data source. You can connect the OPC8 client or MQTT maybe. Here's some settings for these address spaces. What I really want to show you, I want to give you a feel here, because this is now the new feature. What does it mean to do file-based configuration, so that you don't have to use the GUI you're seeing here to configure the connection to a controller or to configure a user, but to do it in a file-based way. And to give you that impression, I can show you the documentation we have here. So when you click on the documentation or help section, you find a section offline configuration, and this describes it. Yeah, so it's a beta. It's still saying Edge connector. I guess in the final release, which will be out in the coming weeks, it's then here also saying STEX suite. This is described. And what you need to do is, you do here, technically speaking, it's a so-called YAML file. You create a YAML file to describe the configuration. Yeah, I mean, of course, which this step requires a user with a skill set. Yeah, you will need to understand YAML to work with it. But we make it easy. We have documentation, and we have a big sample config file here, which you can use as a starting point. And that will then be the file to handle here the file-based configuration. We did one here for the demo, and before I hand over to Andrew, yeah, that would be what you see here. Now, a very simple case for such a configuration file. You can more or less guess or read what it means. We configure here a connection to an S7 PLC, the IP address of the PLC. Likewise, IP address for an Allen Bradley PLC. You always need one namespace, which we call then UA core here, where you can say, hey, is it only one connection, or do I want to have multiple connections in this address space? It's saying all connections address space. We choose only the Siemens one, but anyway. And we have here information about the user, which you can configure in STEX Suite. So this configuration file is saying, please create a user called test. And with this, Andrew, I hand over to you.
Exactly. So thanks, Christopher, for showing us the initial way of deploying STEX Suite. Using the command line. Now we're going to show you a little bit of the benefits that Portainer can bring in that the graphical user interface simplifies all of these deployments and also allows us to deploy software or deploy these containers with the configuration that we just showed. So this is the main UI of Portainer. You can see here that I have a few different connected environments. So local would be where this Portainer server is located. And then I have two other VMs here, which are just hosting different containers. So if we go in here and click, we're just waiting for it to initiate the connection. And we can see basically all of the running containers that are here. We're able to also check, let's check the logs from the agent, right? And this is all live. So this is all available over the UI of Portainer. Exactly, and one of these Portainer servers can actually manage, as Tobias was saying before, it can manage hundreds of thousands of different environments. So for example, in like an IoT use case or something like this, where you have a large fleet of devices that you need to deploy to, one Portainer server is able to handle the deployment to all of those different devices. So what does that look like then with SDEX? So I've spun up a few different devices now. I just created 10 virtual machines, but you can imagine that these would be the same regardless if they are physical devices as well. And I'm going to associate them to an edge group. Now, these edge groups are essentially groups of different devices that all should receive a particular application or applications. So you can think of it as like, yeah, you can mix and match different edge groups together, right? So some devices can be in another application edge group and not in another. So you can basically create more complex organizations of the different devices that you're deploying to, right? And I can show you a little bit of what this means then with our deployment here. So once we've added these devices, you can see that they're automatically available and we can deploy them to them. Now, traditionally, we could go and we could click here and we could start a singular stack, right, for a particular device, but or machine, but we want to do it to multiple machines at the same time, right, for scale. So we can go here to this edge stack where we are prompted then to give it a name. And then we can add the edge group that we just created. All right. And then from here, we're able to add a Docker compose. So that's essentially in whatever the command that Christopher used before to deploy the software, you can actually represent as a Docker compose file, which is essentially a YAML document that defines then exactly how the deployment should look. And so for that, I've actually created a template based on a hosted hosted Docker compose that I have in GitHub. All right, and you can see here that it's already populated here. Now, if I go out to this to the repository, just making sure. Okay, we can see it still. You can see here that I have this Docker compose, right? And we have a configuration parameter here. So we're using actually the edge group name that I created as a way of defining which configuration should be deployed out to those devices. So in this case, I just have the one configuration, but you could imagine having multiple different group names being listed here. And basically what Portainer will do is when it starts to execute on this Docker compose, it'll say, look inside of this configuration folder and find the matching YAML for the configuration then. And we'll then pass that into the container when it's deployed. So we can go down here and send it out. And we'll see that we're getting all of the deployments acknowledging now. So it'll just take them a second for the images to be downloaded to each of the devices, but we should have running SDEX here across these different devices relatively quickly. And perfect. So we can see most of them are running. And just to show you that the configuration actually did pass over, I'll load up one of the instances here. All right, perfect. And now obviously got to change the password again, but we can see that we've already started to configure some of these connectors. So for example, here's the S7 that we configured within the YAML. We could also go down here and see the users, and we can see that this test user that we had in our YAML file is also there. So basically we were able to roll out all of the different, or roll out the configurations to all of the different devices at the same time, depending on which device needs what. So you can imagine this being pretty powerful if you have multiple configurations and then you split it up by multiple different groups and you just deploy to all three. Let's say you had 3 edge groups together, you had 3 different configurations. You would just need one stack here to, let's just for the sake of the argument, to connect to, say this edge group, and let's say this edge group. So we could just have the 3 different configurations, each with these specific names, and one stack which deploys out to all the different devices and configures them. So it becomes really powerful then when you're trying to automate your deployments, as well as it simplifies a lot of the work that would have to go into deploying the software, since you don't need to have someone go and pre-configure the machines. You can do it all via Portainer here. Exactly. So that's a quick overview of the Portainer server here and how Portainer works. And just looking at the time here quickly, I'll quickly go over the industrial app portal, which Tobias mentioned earlier. And this is actually another UI that we're working on that's currently in beta, but will be released fully soon, which is able to control multiple Portainer servers at once. And it also provides let's say a cleaner graphical interface for industrial users, right? So if we go here, we can click devices. Just click for the online ones. You can see that we see the same stuff that we have in the Portainer server, just in a different view, right? So you can also have it listed as cards, and you can get some more information about each of the environments. And we can also structure the environments in, let's say, like a more an organizational way, like more graphically friendly for how these devices are actually in the field. So you can see here, I've got, let's say you've got a factory in some site, and then you have another site, and then you have a device group, which could be, let's say, a machine line or something like that. And we can associate then the different devices to each of these groups. So if we go to here, let me just make sure that one second. Exactly. So if we go to these device groups, we can select then the different environments. So for example, we want these edge machines to be in this particular group here. If we go back then to the hierarchy in general, we'll see that this production group has 4 devices then already in it. And let's say we want to deploy to that to those devices, we can just go here to the apps. And let's say we want to go to, let's download one of the softing edge connectors. So we can go and click install application. We can select our group with the devices in it. And this provides then a nice wizard to basically configure then the containers that'll be deployed. So in this case, we have the time zone set already. It's gonna, you can also then configure each individually. So if I want to use, say for this device, UTC +1, we'd override that as well, right? And you can see that it's different here. All that we need to do now is just install, and it will send out the command to the Portainer server. And we can actually see here it is creating in the background, it's creating it will be creating an edge group. but you'll see that the beginning here is a prefix for the Portainer industrial app portal. So you'll be able to tell which is which. Exactly. So that's, I would say, it from my side, and I'll hand it back over to Christopher and Tobias.
Thank you, Andrew. One more remark about SDEX Suite, the first version of SDEX, which we're going to release, because I forgot to mention that. The first version will support this file-based configuration, as you have seen, for connections for the address space for users. There are more parameters you may want, you have to configure. This is not supported in the first version. So we hope, of course, that these three, let's say, aspects of parameters are already helpful in real-world environments. We would be glad to hear your feedback, which parameters should come next. There may be in real-world applications always some individual, let's say, configuration per instance, just to make sure you understand it's not covering the full range of features here with the first version of SDEX commercially available here in the coming weeks.
Right.
Okay, so that's a
short recap, right? So
yeah,
just a short recap of the demo, right? So before this capability was implemented, right, the file-based configuration, the end user customer then ended up accessing the different web user interfaces that you saw, right, and then configure everything individually. And now the advantages, as you saw, to distribute it across a fleet of applications, plus also to have everything then version controlled, right? So Andrew showed it that every configuration is on Git, which means version control. You know exactly what's running on which device, and this is definitely a benefit compared to some, let's say, configs on legendary USB sticks or something else. And this can be quite powerful, especially when talking about 10 plus instances. Correct. And the last, the second last slide, right? It's about how you get started, right? And
minute 38. So if you're interested here in, let's say, this approach to industrial ed, you could say best of breed here based on an open platform. What can you buy from Softing Industrial? You can buy, of course, SDEX Suite, the license, the hardware product, Industrial Portainer, and the Portainer Business Edition from us. Yeah, interesting, I guess, in particular for customers who wish to reduce the number of suppliers and interfaces, a single interface. If you already run Portainer, of course, we're also glad to sell here SDEX Suite and Industrial Portainer. So to be clear, Industrial Portainer is just the agent. You pay for the platform, for the business edition. Or there will be customers who have an established relationship with a preferred hardware vendor for IPCs, or maybe even a rack system for Edge. Of course, we are also glad to sell here just the software level, so to say, for the Industrial Edge, the SDEX Suite and the Portainer Business Edition. So options here, and for us, equally fine, your choice as our customer. Now, if you're saying, hey, this is interesting, I'd like to try it out or discuss it in more detail. You find here links where you can download our Docker container. As said, SDEX is still a beta. Beta is not available on Docker Hub, but it should be available on Docker Hub in just a few weeks. Product management promised actually it should be released already next week. So I assume in a few weeks, the latest, it will be available on SDEX Docker container on Docker Hub. Or you have here a link how to get started with Portainer and install here a Portainer platform for you to start playing with it. Yeah, you don't need a license file from us. It comes in so-called demo mode, so you can just start the SDEX Suite the way how I've done it, or the way how Andrew has showed it, and it will run, I think, for 3 days, and then it has to be restarted. Or you contact us. Yeah, we have seen just very different ways how customer approach it. Some start playing with the product and order without any technical pre-sales for us. Of course, there are other projects, a longer requirements document and a longer phase, 3 months to let's say, for vendor selection process, equally fine for us. we work here together. We can organize workshops, meetings together, Portainer and us. Flexible here, really as you need, and as it fits your project situation.
Yeah,
Tobias.
and with this in mind, I
Final
think,
remark.
Rami, we start the Q&A session, right? As Christopher's pointing out, right? Also, of course, after the webinar, feel free to reach out to us individually if you have some questions. All the slides will also be distributed via Softing, so you have all of our contact details later on.
So let me get to the questions. One is from Alex Suarez. In a scenario of air-gapped systems, will it be possible to deploy and license SDEX using PIAP?
I'm afraid we'll have to answer it offline. At least I'm
So I'm not familiar with the standard. Maybe the person can elaborate on it. Otherwise, when it comes to air gap, first of all, right, both products are supporting air gaps, right? So we also follow a bring your own infrastructure approach. So you can use us without any internet connection, which is of course beneficial when implementing, as an example, projects in critical infrastructure. And of course, you can use also your product in an air gap environment, but the specific standards is unknown.
Correct. I mean, we have a, if you want to run a license, of course, we have a license server. It can run locally, no internet connection is needed, but sorry, PIAP, I think it was, I can't comment on
that. They were referring to the Portainer Industrial App.
Yeah, Portainer Industrial App Portal.
That is also.
Good question. But this same story for the Portainer Industrial App Portal, also nice abbreviation for this.
Okay, good. Here.
Internally, our better name for this is IAP, but PIAP is also nice. It's also following the same strategy. So bring your own infrastructure, which means you decide where it runs, and you can aggregate your Portainer instances with the Industrial App Portal, but the Industrial App Portal can also just run on your virtual machine. As an example, it's only an additional software container.
Okay, so then there's another question. Can I use the SDEX suite to build up unified namespaces?
Yeah, one of the buzzwords you could say maybe currently in the marketplace, if I may maybe answer here.
Sure.
So what unified namespace? Probably if you ask 3 people, you may get 4 different answers potentially, or maybe it consolidated a bit. The way how we understand unified namespace, it's rather the design pattern than a specific technology, and it's really centered around broker functionality. So we don't offer full MQTT broker, which is what is typically used then to create a unified namespace. We don't offer that. So the short answer to the question is no. The somewhat longer answer is we partner here with vendors of MQTT brokers. Of course, technically any broker could do. For those who are interested, we actually plan to do a webinar in April with Cedalo, the commercial version for the Mosquitto MQTT broker. And in this webinar, we plan to discuss architecture, how the mapping into information models that I mentioned can be used in combination with an MQTT broker or with Mosquitto in that specific case to create a unified namespace, the configuration of the topic structure, the payload, then which can be driven by, for example, an OPC information model. But with SDEX alone, I repeat myself, no.
Okay, great. So maybe save the date. The webinar Christopher is pointing out with Cedalo is on the 16th of April on a Thursday, but we'll invite to that with separate emails and we'll reach out to you. As I don't have any further questions coming in right now, all I can do is offer, if anything comes up, do post them. We'll reach out to Andrew or Tobias or Christopher or myself. We'll leave nothing unanswered. Thank you for joining today's webinar. And for also my side, thank you again, Andrew and Tobias, for joining us in the partnership for doing a good webinar. It was very insightful. And thank you, Christopher, and everybody have a nice day.